Great. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Real quick, as you can see, we have lunch over there. It may be a little early for some folks, but please feel free at any time during this training session to grab yourself some lunch and cookies and a drink. I think many of you already know me. My name is Christine, and I'm an environmental planner with the Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments, or NVCOG. I hope that everyone is familiar with our organization, but if this is your first time visiting our office, I'd like to say welcome. We're a regional planning agency that serves 19 member municipalities with all sorts of things ranging from transportation to land use to environmental work and many other projects and programs. Go to the slide. And one more, please. Okay, so today's presentation aims to teach municipals, officials, staff and commissioners best practices for designing culverts to maximize aquatic connectivity, build resilient infrastructure, and also we'll cover some low impact development. We'll be using several case studies from our regional flood resilience project to illustrate these concepts and explain how you can apply them in your own municipality. So this regional flood resilience project is made possible by a grant from Connecticut. Oh, sorry, one back. A grant from Connecticut Deep, and they have a climate resilience fund that we applied to. We worked with 9 of our municipalities, which you can see up here. What we did is we worked with them to select 9 flood-prone culverts and drainage areas that had been previously identified in these municipal hazard mitigation plans. So with those 9 sites bundled together, NVCOG used the grant funds to hire a single engineering firm, which is Luke's Consulting Engineers, who's with us today and will be giving part of the presentation. And they're creating preliminary designs, conducting wetlands delineations and hydraulic studies, and identifying funding sources for implementation to help get these flooding issues fixed and start moving towards implementation. Additionally, we brought in our partners from Save the Sound, who's also here today, to ensure that these new designs incorporated green infrastructure and use stream smart policies and are good for humans as well as wildlife. So once constructed, the new road stream crossings will safely and responsibly manage stormwater and will reduce flood risk and preserve riparian habitats. So next slide, please. So really quickly, I won't spend a lot of time on this. These are just where the projects are located. And if you're not in one of these areas or from one of these towns, don't worry, this is still going to be broadly applicable to everybody. This is just sort of where we're doing our case studies. So we have Ansonia around Prindle Avenue, Middlebury, a culvert that runs under Cemetery and Artillery Road. Naugatuck and Shelton are similar in that they're sort of underneath dense urban areas. So Naugatuck's is around Highland Avenue, Shelton is around Oak Avenue, and as you can see, touches a bunch of other streets. Oxford's is Kirk's Pond, which is between the fire station and the town hall. Seymour is a culvert under Mountain Brook Road. Thomaston is by Cables Lane and Strawberry Park, and then crosses under South Main to McMahon Drive. Waterbury is like a big hill, which is North Walnut Street, and then branches out to touch all these other roads, Delford, Rhode Island, Ohio, Connecticut. And Wookett is a culvert near Ransom Hall Road. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we get to the meat and potatoes, we wanted to give you a quick note about this event. So most towns in our region are required to comply with the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit, or MS4. I'm sure many of you know that well. So MS4 requires annual training of staff on various stormwater topics, and today can be documented in your annual report as part of that required training. So as long as you've signed in on the sheet and we have your email, we're going to follow up with a certificate of attendance that you can use and attach to your report. And we also have sign up for future MS4 trainings like this one that we'd encourage you to sign up for. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so this training aims to address one of the most frequent and destructive natural hazards our region faces, which is flooding. In addition to flash floods and hurricanes like Isaias, I'm never going to say that right, or Ida, which many of our communities were impacted by. We also had the devastating rainstorm in August of last year. And it's caused destruction that you can see in these pictures. And I'm sure many of you were on the front lines of your own communities dealing with that enormous flood. We can't always plan for storms of that magnitude, but part of what exacerbated the problem with that was aging and undersized culverts. And so gold standards for culvert that was, working 50 years ago is just not functioning in today's climate change impacted world. So that's why we're trying to learn tools to ensure that road stream crossings work on sunny days and stormy days for humans and for animals. So next slide. After this, I'm gonna turn it over to the real experts, but I just wanted to talk about a few of the themes you're gonna be hearing today. So we'll be talking about all these different tools that we can use to manage stormwater. And so here are all the things we're trying to accomplish with this, and everything should sort of come back to these principles. We want to accommodate the natural flow of streams and stormwater. We don't want to fight against the stream or try to force it to do what we want it to do. We want to let it flow as naturally as possible. That's going to be more resilient and better for everyone. When it's not possible to do that, we want to mimic the natural processes of the environment as much as possible. So for instance, letting stormwater soak into the ground rather than run off. By doing these things, you'll also allow aquatic organisms to move more freely. Fish can't go through a culvert that is 2 feet above the stream. And so we want animals to be able to pass through safely. When we don't let water infiltrate into the ground, and when we have these culverts, instead we get runoff. And what happens there is a ton of pollutants get picked up along the way, and it degrades our water quality. Also, plants and soil have a natural way to filtrate these pollutants. So it's important to let nature do its thing. And finally, and probably of most interest to everyone here, all of these things are not only good for the environment, but they're going to help your infrastructure withstand flooding enhanced by climate change. So all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Terry from Luke's to talk about the sort of engineering perspective. Thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the training.
Thank you, Christine. So as Christine said, we're gonna talk a little bit about stormwater BMPs and green infrastructure. The reason we have that as part of this program is the DEP made incorporating green infrastructure and natural-based solutions into this grant program that they gave NVCOG. So what they're trying to do is incorporate that into flood resiliency wherever they can. And by doing that, it may help towns and NVCOG get future grants to actually implement some of these designs that we're going to be proposing for the 9 towns. So we wind up going and looking at all the towns, and we've been out to all of them. We've surveyed all of them. We're working with the town engineering and public works departments, and we're coming up with solutions that we're going to be presenting very soon. But they all seem to have common threads. They all seem to be like long-standing problems. As Christine mentioned, they have older infrastructure. They may have maintenance problems that have just been hanging around for decades in some cases. Some things, there's houses and developments that were built in low-lying areas. If they were coming through a subdivision or planning and zoning process today, that would be the open space and they'd be on higher ground. Some of them it's changing climate, as Christine mentioned. Something that was designed fine in 1935 is now undersized in 2025. And some there's been extra development in the watershed. So something that actually worked well 30 years ago, now it's got a lot of development upstream. It's just pushing more runoff downstream. And the system has to be upgraded to deal with the current conditions. So in looking at what type of lid things might be appropriate, just wanted to mention a couple of key points about lid. It can be very good. The state's been pushing it more in the last few years, particularly with the new stormwater manual in 2024. It's gone from kind of being a cookbook manual they had before of things you could try to being more of a permit guide, but it's got a lot of good new stuff in it. Lid BMPs need to have certain things like good permeable soil underneath them, depth to groundwater, not sitting directly in clay, not sitting directly on a ledge to work. But they can be used in conjunction with conventional stormwater systems like pipes, culverts, hydrodynamic separators, outfalls that are correctly sized and at the right inverts. They can work with all that, but if you can work with, if you can find the right soils and conditions, you can incorporate lid in at least in some percentage in a lot of projects. They also need to have an owner that wants to own and maintain them and has the ability to own and maintain them. It's like a catch basin. If you don't go and clean it out of all the road sand and debris, it's not gonna work for you on a steep slope. Same thing with a lid BMP. If you've got a stormwater basin, it needs to be cleaned every few decades. It needs to have, make sure the outlet is clear. It needs to have, each BMP has its own maintenance needs, and we'll touch on that a little bit here. This slide is from Route 34 in Derby. Craig, could you put up the next one? Oh, all right, this is good. So this is the stuff that Christine touched on with the lid BMPs. And the nice thing is they can help reduce peak flood flows. So if you're trying to solve a problem lower down the watershed, but incorporate some lid BMPs where it makes sense to upstream, you may wind up decreasing the flood flows, which decreases your cost to implement a good solution downstream. It's not available everywhere, but it can be that, and it can do all those other things like improve water quality and groundwater recharge, help the low flows for the fish in the stream, and improve flood resiliency. So I put the link in here for the DEP Stormwater Quality Manual, and I've got a copy of it here with me if anybody wants to look at it afterwards. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. Next slide, please. So this is Route 34 in downtown Derby. If anybody's been through there, the project is just completed this year. It's a major upgrade for Derby and the region and the Connecticut DEP. NVCOG has been a big champion of this. It incorporates wholesale road reconstruction, a wholesale complete streets restoration. It's a $25 million project that's probably been like 4 years in construction and 10 years in design ahead of that. It's been revised and whatnot, but it's coming along, and we were able to work some stormwater BMPs lid style into the project. It's a DOT project. The construction was overseen by District 4. And they did a very good job with that. But again, with the ownership and maintenance, the Connecticut DOT did not feel comfortable owning and maintaining a lot of the lid BMPs. The city of Derby signed a PAL agreement with the DOT right before construction went out to bid that the city would maintain the lid BMPs. Similar, they'd maintain the decorative streetscape, they'd maintain the decorative street lighting. There were a lot of things that were put in there at Derby's request and NVCOG's request because it's a downtown revitalization project. It's not just a highway. So it's got a landscape median in it. It's got refuge for pedestrians. It's got really good crosswalks that are in there now. So it's got 2 lanes in each direction that carry 15 to 20,000 vehicles per day on it. It's a heavy traffic thing. Arterial road, it's got these paved parallel parking spaces on both sides for the downtown business community and to foster greater development. And we were able to incorporate a lot of forest pavers and some rain gardens here in a parking lot. That's the entryway for the Naugatuck River Greenway that goes around the Housatonic River. And that's Bridge Street going to Shelton in the background. And that one, the DOT just got an award. I forget what the award was, but they just got an award for that project. So it's 2 projects together, and it's actually done quite a bit to improve traffic flow through the area. But as part of that, we renovated all the utilities. The utilities have been a nightmare in this job. Some of the stuff goes back 100 years, and we've had to relocate probably $10 million worth of utility work in addition to the DOT work. But we did that. We upgraded all the storm drains. We fixed the sanitary sewers. And we have actually a nice set of BMPs in there for both the town and the state as part of this project, and it's probably one of the biggest installations of porous pavers in the state, I believe, to date. Next slide, please. And we have, like I said, we have 3 rain gardens. They're really not the primary water quality thing, but it's just things people see. And these are actually pretty easy to maintain. I mean, this is the second year they've been in. They got all native wildflowers in there, and basically water goes in from the parking lot and it flows out. You can't see it, but it's out over here. And it keeps draining down, and eventually it gets into other rain gardens that then are tied into the city storm sewer. So the state storm sewer. So everything kind of flows from one BMP to another. So the more you can link the BMPs together, you get a better bang for your buck. Next slide, please. But everybody thinks this is the land, it's pretty landscaping, but it's landscaping that's designed to be functional. This is a picture of the road running off into the parallel parking spot here. This is all porous pavers where water seeps into a deep reservoir of crushed stone underneath the pavers, and it's sitting on highly permeable sand and gravel to allow it to soak in. Any overflow comes down to conventional catch basins that are then piped downstream. The berm along the sidewalks and along the sidewalks on city streets, all that catches all the runoff from the sidewalks and private driveways and things that drain into the road. So the net result is pretty much all the impervious areas are getting treated on this project. At least partially. Not every private driveway gets picked up. Next slide, please. But it's the same amount of money you would spend ordinarily. Instead of putting in a landscaped parallel parking space with a crushed stone base underneath the road, you're doing one that's got a stormwater function to it. And it's a decorative function. So the downtown business community likes the fact it's decorative. It's got nice street trees. It's got all this nice looking pavers, but it also helps renovate stormwater quality to the Naugatuck and Housatonic rivers. And it's just got these little gaps in the pavers. The one thing with the pavers I would say is it takes a lot of hand labor to set them. But once you get, they had, CJ Fucci did the work, but they had a landscape subcontractor do it. Once he got it going, they made good progress. And all this takes is, annual maintenance with a power sweeper, a vacuum sweeper, which Derby has. So, this type of thing, and most towns probably have a sweeper, or they can rent one. And they may have to replace some of the fine crushed stone in the gaps once in a while. But it's not, you don't have to go out and buy a $300,000 vac truck in order to maintain this. It's a doable thing to do. And same thing with the rain gardens. Those types of things are doable things to maintain. Next slide, please. And this is around the corner of Valley Transit District. It's over by Home Depot if you've been down there. It's sandwiched in between Route 8 on this side and Metro North Railroad on the other side. And it was a retrofit where they were upgrading their bus maintenance facility. It does all the shuttle bus service for senior citizens in the area. And we couldn't do everything with that the state might like to see, but we did get underground detention systems that are recharged, and we did get a long linear rain garden in here that actually picks up runoff from the road and stuff from Route 8 and from the employee parking lot here, goes in these paved leak offs into this little longitudinal rain garden. Next slide, please. And it's got a catch basin here that's set up above grade a little bit. So water soaks into the ground, and then in a big heavy storm, it goes into the catch basin and into the underground perforated pipe that's got a detention outlet on it. So it's multiple BMPs. And this actually does very well. Again, it's on very permeable sand and gravel. It's got a deep depth to groundwater table. There's no ledge. It's perfect for this type of thing. The only thing I might have done is overdone it with the paved leak offs, but O&G did a very good job setting the precast curbs once they got going. Next slide, please. That catch basin has a conventional hood over the outlet of the catch basin before it goes in the underground piping. And for whatever reason, I didn't realize that there's a lot of trash that comes off of Route 8 and goes in the road and gets washed in the various drains. So this picks up all that and gives Valley Transit a place to clean that out once a year when they do it, and they can clean that out with, a clamming rake. I mean, it's just a catch basin, just reach in and pull all the debris out. It's not like they gotta rent a vacuum truck to do this. So the only thing that's bad with this is they have the people they hire to do landscaping maintenance wind up weed whacking a lot of the wildflowers and stuff we put in there after the first year. But it's one of those things that the grass is still working, the trees are still working, most of the shrubs are still in place, so it's actually acting as a bioretention area. It's just not quite as pretty as it was when we first started, but the concept is there. You can, and it's shoehorned into an existing thing that instead of being a raised landscape island that you have to mow every week, it's something you only have to clean a couple times a year. So it's actually can be a low maintenance BMP that's also a low maintenance landscape area in an industrial setting. Next slide, please. This is in Shelton. It's at a hotel on Bridgeport Avenue, and it's the outfall. This brook in the background was a big issue with the Wetland Commission. It's the brook that comes out of Trap Falls Reservoir and goes down to, I think, Beaver Pond Dam in Stratford, and the people at Beaver Pond Dam were very concerned about stormwater quality. So what it does is the stormwater comes out, goes into a big crushed stone feature here that's got basically a dry laid stone wall around it, and it catches anything that gets through the storm system up in the parking lot, which is a vortex unit and big detention pipes. And it was supposed to go into a little wetland mitigation area here, but it wound up seeping down through the crushed stone and going out, but it makes a very good filter. But it's a very low cost thing that a lot of towns could implement at different places at existing storm outfalls to retrofit it. If you don't have an area where you can't do a big riprap pad at the end of the outfall, or you're limited on where you can do stuff. So long as you have rocks, which we have in a lot of in Connecticut, you can do like a little dry laid stone wall thing, and this one's got a ramp that comes down to the parking lot, and so you can access it with a backhoe and clean it out if you ever have to. And they've changed the name of the hotel a few dozen times, 3 times, I think, since it went in, but this is still stable, and it's been that way for 15 years. It's a very robust system. Next slide, please. This is Bass Pro in Bridgeport. It has a variety of underground BMPs. I don't know if anybody's been down there getting fishing or hiking gear, but it's right off I-95. Next slide, please. And as part of Steel Point, they did a lot of flood resiliency in that it's a 52-acre peninsula. There's multiple buildings going up. There's several going up right now. Bass Pro went in 2015. And one of the features it had was we took down, the property owners took down buildings that were along Yellow Mill Channel. You can see 95 in the background. Ron is doing the final walkthrough, and this going along the infiltration trench here on the parking lot. And this collects runoff from the parking lot. There's no curb here. It goes in an infiltration trench that allows it to soak in the ground. And then it goes through the timber guide rail, and there's a vegetative buffer here that goes down to a wetland mitigation area along the Yellow Mill Channel. So this had all been impervious, and a lot of that was turned to vegetated. So it's got a mixture of things that are lit. The nice thing with this is a coastal floodplain. It's a riverine floodplain. This has been fine with flooding for over 10 years. This could go in a lot of places where you've got a parking lot or commercial area that's along a river, as long as it's got reasonable gravel and it's reasonably flat and it's got some permeability to it. The only thing you do have to do is you have to rake off the top. You can't apply sand to it, but you just rake off the top cobblestones. And it's, for most people, the Bass Pro people think it's a landscaping amenity. They don't even realize it's stormwater BMP, but the owners maintain all the storm facilities down there. And what they've also done down there for flood resiliency is they raised a lot of the site up from elevation 8 to elevation 15. And they've done new bulkheads and all new infrastructure down there. So it's a tremendous amount of infrastructure, but this was all part of a site plan approval for Bass Pro. Next slide, please. This is Moose Hill Road in Trumbull. It was a LOTSIP program. It was a road reconstruction program for the town. They had a culvert that flooded. It had originally had a 24-inch pipe, and that clogged the debris and flooded. So the town threw a 30-inch pipe next to it and it still clogged the debris and flooded. So we replaced it with this box culvert. It's a small box, it's 8x3, I believe, but it's got a gravel bottom. And this is after Hurricane Ida, and you can see where water got up probably to the top of the box, but didn't flood over the road. And we were able to pick the road up a little bit, but not much, because it's right near the Shelton town line, so it had to tie in with the existing Shelton grades. But it did not, it stopped being clogged with trees, it's provides fish passage during normal times. And it's very robust and resilient because it's a larger size culvert designed for today's watersheds and rainfalls. Next slide, please. And that's in a lower period of time. And it doesn't have much, it doesn't have 2 feet of gravel in the bottom of it. It's just got 6 inches to a foot and some cobblestones, but they're stable. And I go down there and there's minnows swimming through it and the raccoons are using it, and raccoons are probably feasting on the minnows, but they are doing fine there. And next slide, please. The other feature of that is it abuts Aquarium Water Company Class 1 public watershed areas going into one of their reservoirs. So we work very closely with Aquarium's watershed protection people to come up with restoration and sediment erosion controls that incorporate a lot of native wildlife, native plantings along the brook. And they've grown in very, very well. So Aquarium's very happy with using native plantings as part of the wetland mitigation around the culvert restoration. So it's a good, I don't want to say it's a selling point, but it's something that the town and the adjoining property owners really appreciated. The only bad part is we have a lot of winterberry there, and sometimes the residents go and cut them for Christmas decorations and there's Christmas tables around Christmas. But I think the depredation's going down now, so hopefully those will keep growing. Next slide, please. And downtown Waterbury, they've got tree pit filters here that the NVCOG went out and took pictures of yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's very good. So they've got a permeable, it looks, I don't know if it's an asphalt or if it's a permeable rubber, but it takes runoff from the sidewalk, lets it soak in there, and incorporates a pervious component in a streetscape. So the entire streetscape isn't pervious, but at least some components of it are. Next picture, please. And there's a close-up of the tree pit filters, which I'm sure the NVCOG folks will be able to direct people to if they want to go out and take a look at it themselves after this. But it's an idea where you can incorporate some of this stuff into a streetscape, a downtown streetscape. You can still have it be functional for the public, for pedestrians, but it can also have a stormwater purpose. Next slide, please. And this is in Mansfield. It's a storage center project. It's across the street from E.O. Smith High School on the south end of the campus. This was a joint project between the developer, the town, and UConn, and it has a lot of open space features in the back that are worked on, but it also has tree pit filters along all the roads. Next slide, please.
Hey, Terry,
Yes,
was that installed new or was that added on? Was that a retrofit after?
this one was all new. They
Okay.
basically, they redid the roads and some of the existing buildings there and did all new. Next slide, please. So on this one, they have these tree pit filters where there's a small inlet. Water goes into the tree pit filter, soaks in the ground, and there's an overflow pipe for the next downstream conventional catch basin. And those all go downstream. So what you wind up getting is almost that you doubled the number of inlets on your road. Not quite, because these are small inlets that are designed to just provide a water quality feature, but it helps build extra resiliency if you can get street flooding. So if you've got an area where you don't have enough road, catch basins to handle more high intensity storms, these are things you can add and then maybe fold it in so it's local businesses or even residential areas. Treat them like they're a landscaping amenity with a little dogwood tree underneath the overhead power lines. Next slide, please. And it's the same amount of money. This really is not a big expense. This is the same amount of money you'd spend for a street tree with it's got a concrete box on it. So it is a little bit more money, but if you're doing a whole project, in this case new, you're just able to incorporate these little BMPs into the project, and this catches runoff from the roads and the sidewalk. So it's actually acting as a water quality treatment system. And then there's other things that are downstream when the storm drainage system discharges into an underground detention feature, which has all kinds of outfalls and detention basins down below. But this is a good first treatment for water quality, and it helps build flood resiliency. Next slide, please. And this is one that Tom used when they were up at UConn last year. And it's this really big rain garden. It's all interlinked next to one of their new campus buildings. I think this is sort of a hillside on the more up toward
It's in front of their new science building.
their new science building.
Yeah.
But it's got like 5 big rain gardens that are all linked together. And if you have UConn money, you can do something like this. But you can do a mini version of this too for, I think, a lot of things that are like commercial developments, if they're coming before your planning and zoning commission and things like that, or possibly condominiums if you have the real estate. Next slide, please. So this is, they're just showing how these things are all interlocked together, and they've got culverts underneath the sidewalks and driveways, and that's, I believe, the new science building with all the solar panels in the roof, so they're trying to be really green. I was trying to find pictures of rain gardens that are a little smaller and a bit more in municipal budgets, but this is obviously, if you had a real lot of money, this is obviously an option. So the key things I think take away with this are, and there's other options I didn't show, like retrofitting older detention basins into being a modern stormwater basin. Taking areas where you've got some curbing and maybe getting rid of some curbing or adding leak offs, so it's going into a grass swale. Having little rain gardens on the sides of roads, but you need to make sure people like them. Having infiltration basins and doing wetlands restoration. So there's things that you can do in the watershed, little things, maybe multiple projects over time that can actually make things a little bit better. So I guess the key thing here is LID is not, it's not gonna solve every problem in the world, and it's not applicable everywhere. There's a lot of these projects are on steep hillsides that have a lot of ledge, or there's just no room to put stuff in, and there's some kind of constraint that prevents that. And those are gonna be mostly add more catch basins, add bigger pipe, get the water downhill where it's tied into something that can take it, and just move it along so it's not causing flooding problem in everyone's front yard and filling their basements. But in other areas where you've got nice soils and you've got a depth to groundwater and not as much ledge, you can definitely do some of this stuff, but you need to have owners that want to own and maintain it. So, like I said, that example with the that dry stone wall at the outfall, that came from working with Charlie Fisher in Ridgefield. He was telling me he could do that because his public works yard has a backhoe. He can clean out surface things all day long. He didn't have a vacuum truck at the time. So I mean, you just gotta make sure the height of the weir is enough so it's not putting a tailwater in the storm drainage system. But towns are very nimble and creative, and I know a lot of people are used to working with limited budget and limited resources. So I think this can be one of the many solutions to help resolve some flooding issues. So that's it. And I'll let Paul talk about the streams.
Thanks, Terry. Okay. You're doing up the other slideshow. Great. Thanks, sir. I'll just take this time to introduce myself. My name is Paul Woodward. I'm a program manager, senior program manager at Save the Sound. I came to Save the Sound a couple of years ago from about 15 years in consulting, where I did a lot of river restoration and dam removal work. Prior to that, I was at UConn and came out with a master's focus in fluvial geomorphology. So it's a division or a component of geology or geography, depending on where you learn it. That is focused on how rivers and streams shape the surface of the earth and how they respond to our impacts or geologic changes. It became very apropos of the work that I, started doing. I got to focus a lot on dam removals and other types of river restoration. How you doing there, Greg? Hang on. We'll call in IT.
We're just talking about you, Roy, before you walk in.
Yeah, Roy entered and then the conversation just got killed. Awesome, perfect, thank you. Get back up. I'm gonna move quickly through some of those photo slides, but. So we're here to talk about Stream Smart. Stream Smart is a distillation of what is also known as stream simulation. This is a design methodology towards dealing with culverts that was developed by the U.S. Forest Service. U.S. Forest Service, you might think, why are they care? Well, they've got more miles of forest roads than the interstate highway system. So they have a huge problem on their hands in terms of maintaining roads that has to convey pretty heavy trucks. And they have a lot of road crossings that they have to deal with. And they also have a multi-use charge of trying to accommodate natural resources while also accommodating logging operations. So that's where they came around. This Stream Smart was initially developed by the state of Maine. And now it's gospel that we're spreading south and into other states. And I think we're one of the last states in New England to take on. Next slide, Greg. So a consortium of organizations, TNC, HBA, FRWA, I don't know if these are acronyms that are familiar to you, but Save the Sound has teamed up with other environmental organizations to pull together workshops to give more formal trainings to municipal folks and people in the private sector to understand these approaches. And so Stream Smart is like a one-day workshop that is based on a week-long training of stream simulation. If you have an opportunity to attend any one of them, I strongly recommend it. Stream simulation is a great technical training for people that are really involved in actually the design of work. Stream Smart is a distillation that helps you really understand the concepts. Slide, please. So for this presentation, I'm going to touch on the value of Stream Smart. I feel like I'm going to be beating a dead horse. We're all kind of understanding the value here. I will talk about culvert assessment and the NAC program. I'll talk about a little bit about the design process. I'll hit on regulatory requirements really quickly, and then I'll breeze through some potential funding sources. And then if there's time, we'll do some Q&A, or we'll do Q&A while we eat lunch. So Stream Smart crossings have a dual goal here. We're trying to restore and reconnect fish and wildlife habitat while improving roads and public safety. We're obviously trying to avoid the big blowouts. We're seeing many of these photos. I got photos from the towns that you're all coming from. I got a great set of photos from Southbury. I didn't take them, but I'm sure you guys are very familiar with them. We're trying to avoid these catastrophic failures that are bad for fish and wildlife. They're bad for budgets. They're bad for public safety. Yeah, I'm gonna do this a lot as a segue for that. Obviously, free flowing streams have their own benefits. You know, we tend to come at these a little bit trout focused, but trout fishing is not something to be laughed at. 174,000 licensed anglers in Connecticut, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in terms of salaries and wages, retail sales, permit fees. It's one of the most popular sports, outdoor sports, second only to running. Who knew that was the most popular, but that's apparently the case. And, you know, we have a decent amount of trout habitat throughout the state that we are trying to reconnect. And every time we disconnect it, we cause problems for not just trout, but other organisms as well. As an example here, this is a map that was indicating how much a single fish needed to move throughout its lifetime. So basically it spawned in one area, or it hatched in one area. It moved to another area to rear. It had to be a little bit sheltered. It needed to move to a different area for colder water during hot times of year. It needed to move another area for good foraging opportunities where it got bigger, and then it had to go to a different area to spawn. So it's a lot of miles that a single fish needs in order to live out its full lifespan. So that's the general concept behind trying to accommodate fish passage. But it's not just about the fish, not just about inland fish, we're also talking about many sea run fish or diadromous fish. Connecticut's home to 5 solid fish that we're trying to restore or trying to bring back from the brink of extinction or extirpation in the area. That's American shad, American eel, river herring, which is 2 species, alewife and blueback herring. And not pictured here is sea lamprey. And then, of course, there's the mussels that depend on them. They're sessile organisms. They do not move on their own. They are only able to recolonize areas when they latch onto the gills of fish in their larval stages, and that's what gets them back into those spaces where they came from. Without fish moving into those areas, they then die out in those areas, and that's why mussels basically are one of the most imperiled aquatic organisms in the region and globally. And it's not just about the fish, whether they're resident or inland, we're also looking at mammals, aquatic mammals, reptiles, amphibians, macroinvertebrates, a variety of those 2 turtles there. You know, we have box turtles and painted turtles, we have bog turtles, snapping turtles, all of those are moving along these corridors. We'd like to keep them off the roadway and along the stream to avoid, unfortunate outcomes. So besides the free-flowing streams and the habitat, free-flowing streams do, what I like to say, convey the 4 fundamental flows. Water is the obvious one, we all understand. Sediment is the underappreciated one. Sediment is just thought to be a pollutant, shouldn't be there, it's not actually true. Natural streams need to convey both suspended sediment, the finer grains, but also the bed load through it. That's the sand, the gravel, the cobbles, the boulders, all those things are moving through, and they are essential ingredients. If you don't incorporate those things, then you're gonna have a problem. In addition is woody material, thought to be kind of a nuisance, but really it's a critical element of a natural stream channel for stream ecology. They provide a lot of resting habitat, they create dynamic hydraulic habitats in the channel, and of course, aquatic organisms are moving up and downstream. So 4 fundamental flows that a natural stream needs to convey, and those are the things we need to be thinking about when we're designing these crossings. A healthy stream will moderate water temperature, and also to do all this, it needs access to its floodplain. If it had a floodplain and it's been cut off, problems will arise. And I'm not just talking about the bigger rivers either. It's also the small streams. They're vital. Small streams have high densities of brook trout and other critical habitats for a variety of species. So small streams shouldn't be discounted. Obviously, stream crossings are barriers, so I'm gonna cruise through some of these. And the problem is widespread. I focus in dams a lot. There are about 5,000 dams across the state of Connecticut, and guesses how many road stream crossings there are across the state of Connecticut? Anyone bold enough to shout out a number?
5,000.
10,000. You said 10,000.
50,000.
Arrow forward, please. 20,000 number is the estimate where roads intersect streams. I had done one in grad school and I hit 30, but a lot of those are just errors in mapping, so it's really around 20,000 across the state of Connecticut, so that's a pretty high density for a lot of the states in the Northeast. So arrow forward, please. Which rolls me into the effort to assess culverts across the region. So the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative, that's NAACC or NAC as we like to call it, is a network of individuals from universities and organizations and agencies that came together to say, how can we address this kind of problem on a regional scale? And so they actually came up with a really robust program. So they developed a standardized protocol to inventory and assess culverts and score them according to the degree of passage or severity of passage. It's a great effort. It is actually on the brink of merging with another sister organization that developed down in the Southeast. That's called SARP, or the Southeast Aquatic Resources Partnership. And as far as I know, it's about to come together to become the North American Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. So it's going to retain its NAC acronym, but be coast to coast. It's a robust method. It involves some training and some coordination. So the crossing survey has a really detailed manual. It's a workshop you need to go through to get certified. it produces a really, I'd say rigorous, assessment protocol that you can follow in the field. It's a field-based assessment. This isn't good enough for you all to see, but this section is about the crossing data, so you're looking at things like coordinates and so GPS coordinates, the crossing type, whether it's a bridge or a culvert, it's multiple culverts. You're looking at the photos you've taken at the inlet, the outlet, upstream and downstream, the flow conditions you see, is it tidal or not? Is it aligned to the stream or not? Is the bankful width been measured? All sorts of, information about that crossing. And then it gets into the actual structure itself. What's the shape? What are the dimensions of it? So it's a really good, way to inventory information, and within a matter of an hour or so, you can get a lot of information and then move on to the next. And so that has been done across the region, and we are doing it sort of watershed by watershed at this point in Connecticut. Much of New England has been covered, or many high priority parts of New England states have been doing this. And so the database is growing, and so I really encourage you to check out their website, which is going through some transitions right now, but has a ton of resources and a ton of data that you can access really easily just through a couple of clicks of the mouse. Its website is streamcontinuity.org. I think that address is going to remain the same after this merger with the sort of nationwide scale. But you get a really easy to use GIS sort of map interface, color coded by the severity of the barrier. So dark blue being no barrier, light blue being insignificant, green being minor, yellow being moderate, and so on. And when you click on that dot, you get a brief printout. You get photos of that were taken at that assessed location. You get all the crossing data and all the structured data to go with it. And you get an explanation as to why this particular one was rated as a severe barrier. So it's really good information, really at your fingertips. It can really help you assess, if your towns had this done, then you've got a lot of information at your disposal. If it hasn't been done, then it's a good idea to try to pursue it and try to get one to happen just now. So through an initial analysis of data that was collected down now, this is a few years old, but you can see where the areas have been focused in Connecticut. We basically are seeing culverts falling into like three broad categories, sort of a rule of thirds almost, where 36% are basically no AOP, no aquatic organism is getting through that. 36% is a reduced or partial barrier, and then 28% is full AOP, although most of those are just bridges. So, and one more time too, I hate the animation, I'm out of control. So really only about 3% of the culverts actually provided AOP. So culverts are really not doing a good job of passing aquatic organisms. So how do culverts block fish passage? Some of this is obvious, but maybe it's not. Flows too fast, we call that a velocity barrier. Water is too shallow, we call that a depth barrier, or the fatal perch. We don't have fish that can jump. This is not Alaska. We don't have salmon that can jump into the mouth of a grizzly. They don't jump into culverts. So the perch, and most often it's a combination of the two. So we'll breeze through some of these examples. So too fast, too shallow, perch are often a combination of those effects. Obviously, with climate change, this is creating more risk for our roads. Storms are coming at us with an increase in frequency and intensity. Bigger storms are becoming more frequent. So that's another factor that is driving our desire to try to repair or restore culverts. And then, of course, there's that common moniker, the 100-year storm, we'd like to say, and that really gave a lot of us a misconception that if it happened last year, that we're good for the next 100. That is absolutely not the case. It never was the case. It really translates into the storm with a 1% exceedance probability. So if you flip a coin and you get a heads, and then you go to flip a coin again, what is your chances you're gonna get heads? Still 50-50. If you got a 100-year storm that happened last year, the chance of it happening this year is still 1%. It hasn't changed just because it happened recently. And then with climate change, somewhere around 1970, we've hit a point of inflection in our hydroclimatic patterns. Our 100 years now becoming inching closer to the more frequency, greater frequency of like a 50-year event. So these calculations and these estimates that were backwards looking at data from last 100 years, now we're going to be basically focusing on the seventies and forward. That's gonna change our estimates for what size of event is coming out, what frequency. So next slide. This is a video. I don't know if you can play that. Does that play? If you hover over that, yeah, there you go. Somebody was fortunate enough to see this event. This is the August event, the unnamed storm. That was the other thing. These aren't, coming at us with names from 6 hours or 6 days away. This is something that came cruising through the neighborhood, and I think many of you were familiar with this, a 24-foot box culvert that blew out on Route 34.
Amazing thing is that it's standing there.
Yeah, I know, you're like, they're getting too close. That's definitely not a video you should take, or not an angle you should go for there. It's too close to a lip of asphalt. I think it was a camera crew is what I heard from a news outlet. We can pump that slide too. This is Southbury. I think 3 people are from Southbury, or two. You guys are probably as intimately aware of this as we are, but so a 16 inches of rainfall in 6 to 8 hours turned into a 1,000-year storm, which does not equate, by the way, to a 1,000-year flood. Those are not equal measurements, not one and the same. We could talk about more of that later, but that kind of devastation is what we're obviously trying to avoid. And so there are solutions to this. So let's just cruise right through this. And, obviously the solution is coming at us with a greater cost. And so we always ask the question, is it really worth it? So let's move ahead. I'm going to state it. So Vermont, as I said, other states have been doing this in a little bit more advanced than we are. Vermont has the White Mountain National Forest, so they have Forest Service up there. So they've done a lot of those culverts in the forest, the National Forest up there. So in 2011, 1,000+ culverts were damaged or destroyed in Irene. It was actually that 2 Irene and Lee that came really close together. Now, obviously, this is a major storm, not a design storm, not something we're really trying to design our culvert crossings for. But still, despite that, the stream smart culverts or the stream simulation designs in the Green Mountain National Forest are way better. All their other ones were blowing out left and right, and their stream sim designs actually survived. And I happen to have had the privilege to work on one in Whately, Massachusetts, so it's Western Mass, and it was parallel to a couple others that had been studied at the same time. Those 2 storms came through. Our culvert that we designed with an open bottom arch did not get damaged at all, and the ones adjacent were definitely damaged and needed road repair. So we can see that this has, even in events that are well beyond the design storms, they have resilient abilities. So next slide. A study was finally published in 2017. People were always saying like, well, can you really show it? Can you prove it with evidence? These researchers looked at a variety of culverts in a park system and found that this is showing sort of this low upfront cost for the conventional approach, high upfront cost for the stream simulation approach. And then at some point in the design life, there was a major repair or maintenance effort that increased the cost there. And so over the full lifespan of the structure, it actually turned out to be a savings. It's still maybe a hard sell for when you consider how much you have to spend up front. But with storms becoming more frequent, that payout may be coming sooner than we ever expected. So here's some examples of Stream Smart solutions. These are not in Connecticut. These are actually in Maine. This is a state road. That's before a top image is before Irene. You can tell right there that structure is not wider than the stream channel. The stream channel is much wider than that. Then after Irene, it blew out the road, the structure stayed, but the road is gone. And then afterwards, they replaced it with a 58-foot bridge. Next slide. In a rural local road solution, an 8-inch corrugated metal pipe were placed with a 24-foot open bottom corrugated metal arch. So that's corrugated metal on the top, but it's resting on stem walls that are concrete that go below. Next slide. And then this example from a private forest road. I really want you to tune into this because if you're coming from a town, you're always thinking about budgets and how, well, on these roads that don't need to convey school buses and fire trucks, this might be a design solution for you where we're using modular blocks, modular concrete blocks, basically stacked stacked concrete blocks. So a 3 foot metal pipe, totally inadequate, barely adequate for base flow, totally inadequate for any sort of storm flow. Turned into an 18 foot span on those concrete block abutments, and that was for a forest truck, so that's conveying forest trucks. So it can bear the weight. It's not gonna meet DOT standards, but that's an alternative for driveways, small access roads, whatever. Something that doesn't require, actually, this one had some fish passage, strict fish passage goals, so they had built, they had installed 3 boulder weirs right through here that were meant to, maintain grade, but allow for fish to move up through that steep reach there. So what makes what makes a solution stream smart? It's got to pass fish and other organisms, it's got to pass sediment and woody material, and it should maintain the natural channel characteristics. And so I want to talk a little bit about the design process or some of the key steps in designing them. So there's a golden rule, let the stream act like a stream, but what does that really mean? So I'm gonna just hit on a couple of the bigger ones. Oh, and before I do that, there's obviously a sort of a hierarchy of preferences here. When you're looking at stream crossings that are not doing well, ideally, can you just remove it? Is there any way you can get away with avoid creating a crossing or removing the crossing altogether? Chances are, no, that's not an option. So third one down, building an open bottom structure that spans the channel. Bridges are ideal or preferable. Bottomless 3-sided box culverts are also preferable, and then arches are also an option. And then lastly, sort of the lowest hanging fruit, I would say, is the embedded culvert. So the rules of thumb when it comes to designing like this, we put these in a list of S's, hopefully to make it easier to remember, but spanning the stream width, setting the elevation right, slope and skew to match the stream, and substrate in the crossing. So let's talk through that. So this approach requires a bit more field survey and assessment from trained personnel than we're normally used to doing for these types of projects. It should involve a detailed stream profile survey that gets the bed elevations, that helps you indicate the slope of the stream channel. It helps you figure out what kind of scour potential you can estimate after you have a good profile, how deep the river could scour. That helps you plan your footer depths for new structures, and you should also capture the road structure height. You also want to do multiple cross sections to get the bank full width of the channel and the depth of that, and also characterize the sediment with pebble counts and measuring key features. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the fields, the bank full width, this is the width of the natural channel right before it floods. In a natural and an undisturbed channel, that's what that means. It's the point of incipience where just before you top out of your banks. However, that can get tricky in any channel that's been armored or channelized, or otherwise manipulated by people. That becomes a trickier measurement. But you want to get multiple measurements upstream and downstream the crossing in undisturbed locations, and then average those out, because there is a range of natural variability. Forward one, because that will show an image here. And so that shows you sort of how water width is down low in a daily base flow event. But the bankful width is actually a little bit higher and usually below any perennial or woody vegetation. And outside of that would become a floodplain. So I mentioned the stream profile as being really important, and the protocol here, the approach here is to measure well upstream and downstream, usually 20 to 30 times the width. So it's synchronized to the width of your channel. So if you got a 10-foot wide stream, you're talking 400 to 600 feet. And that's long, and longer is even better. So and when you do this profile, you're not trying to get every detail, but you are trying to get some key features. You're trying to get all the high points and all the low points. And I don't mean high on top of a rock. I mean high as in like if it's a pool riffle stream on an example A there, you want to get the head of that riffle, the tail of that riffle, and the deepest point of that pool. And you're following the fall way. That's the point that's deepest in the channel. So it's even deeper in the riffle section there. But it's not the center line. It's not just a blanket center line. That's not really a geomorphically valuable feature. So you're trying to follow that fall leg. And so in the step pool system, you're looking to get the pool tail crest, the top of the step, the bottom of that pool, the pool tail crest, the top of the step, the bottom of the pool, all the way down. You want to get that level of detail to be able to see that. And then when you pull it all together, you get profiles that look like this, and then arrow forward. So this starts to reveal, oh, this isn't actually the natural stream alignment or stream profile. There's actually accumulated sediment upstream. there's some fill in the downstream, so arrow forward. The conventional approach would have only looked at this much of the stream length, so it's really not much to tell the story of what's going on. Arrow forward, this sort of revised approach or the stream simulation approach, the stream smart approach is to survey much further to be able to tell the whole story. And so what you're looking for is, what you're ideally looking for is that it's this preferred setting where you've got a uniform slope and your crossing is not really changing that. However, what you end up finding, if you do a good profile, is that you could be in a convex or a concave situation. The convex situation, that means if you went open bottom without really understanding it, you could initiate a head cut up through your stream channel. So you need to account for that. You need to design for that, maybe a grade control. Maybe change the whole slope of the stream running through the cross section. In the concave situation, you have to change the sort of abrupt change in slope where you have a steep to shallow. That's usually an area where you get sediment deposition. You get sediment deposition on the upstream side of your culvert, you're gonna bury it. So that's also got to be incorporated into your design approach. Obviously, you can get the combination, the concave, convex, where you have both issues to think about. So all these things need to be looked at and require a little extra thought and analysis. And then I mentioned substrate. We did this with pebble counts, that's showing sort of a zigzag pattern. I was schooled with the grid pattern, but basically you are literally reaching into the stream blindly to get a random survey with a finger, pointing the finger, picking up the rock you got, putting it through a template to figure out what its width is. And you're collecting 100 of those at least in a stretch of river so that you can then classify and plot your data so you can get a distribution curve, a frequency distribution or a cumulative distribution curve to understand what's the average stone size here, what's the maximum stone size, what's the minimum stone size, and use that to then design or prescribe what you're going to put into your substrate in the stream crossing. And you need to run that through some analysis too, some hydraulics to understand, is that going to stay? Does it need to be upsized? So next slide. And then also, in addition to doing a general pebble count, we looked at key features. One of the sites that we were doing for this project had steps, lots of boulder steps. We actually looked and measured like how many steps in this step. What are the biggest boulders here that are actually holding it in place? These are the key features, the anchoring elements of a boulder. It's important to understand anchoring elements of a boulder step. It's important to understand those so that you can put those into your design. So substrate in the crossing provides roughness. You get a little bit of bank line in this image here. You get some areas with low velocities or some eddies. All of that provides habitat, provides passage abilities for a range of fish, not just trout, but other creatures that are moving up and down the boulder. Any questions about any of that? Then you're gonna move right into some basic, just a real high overview of the regulatory requirements. How am I doing?
You're 25 minutes in?
Okay, you probably finish it for. So three major permits you're looking at, or there's agencies you need to get permits from. The Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, our commission, the DEEP and Army Corps. If you're gonna embark on a project, strongly encouraged to reach out to Land and Water, the LWRD division. Those are the contact information for anybody that's starting that process. And then fisheries as well, because they're gonna have your back. If you're doing this in the stream smart method, they're gonna be advocating for this and they're gonna help you move the project along. So the sooner you engage with them, the better. Yeah, and that's reiterating this point. They really want you to reach out to them. And they also want you to do it in case there's any snags, there's any issues that might come up that they can help flag for you before you actually submit a permit. If you're just submitting a permit blindly to them, you're gonna run into some issues. It's better to talk to them, engage with them ahead of time. And that's fine. This is a good segue. They also have their own stream crossing guidelines. They were written years ago. I consider them really dated. 2008, but they are basically based on the same principles. They're just really a bit more general. They basically specify no activity may substantially disrupt the necessary life cycle movements of those. It's a wordy way of saying you can't disrupt fish passage or aquatic organism passage. They're essentially pointing to stream smart principles and practices. So if you're looking at those standards, you're probably going in the right direction. They don't give you the best design guidance on how to do it, but they're telling you what you should look for. And that will send me into funding. So funding for these is always a bit of it's a competitive bid process in almost every case. You got to show that this is a meaningful project that's going to yield some good ecological benefits. You're more likely to be funded if you're coming from a watershed scale prioritization, like a hazard mitigation plan would be great, or some kind of a watershed management plan. So here's 8 different possible sources. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has 2, National Fish Passage Program, and the Partners for Fish and Wildlife. You need to reach out to them to see if your project, rises to a level or meets their criteria. Also, NIFWIF, or the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, that second major bullet, has the Long Island Sound Futures Fund. Their grants are ranging 50K to 1.5 million. The Northeast Forest and Rivers Fund, 75K to 1 million. Also, the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, which has been involved in NAC. They have sources. Restore America's Estuaries has funding that come with a match. Granted, match varies from year to year. And I should say, all of these sources are a little bit fluid, given the current climate at the federal level and how much money is being routed to these funding agencies. Math requirements are going to change. And then the USDOT Federal Highway has 2 programs: a National Culvert Removal, Replacement, and Restoration Grant that goes up to 2 million with a 20% match, and the Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program that is hitting much bigger numbers there, with also a big match, 20% match. So from, in addition to these, other agencies are here to support. Whether they're actually providing funding or not is kind of highly variable. I'd already mentioned the U.S. Forest Service. They do stream simulation programs, trainings. Those are free. You don't have to pay anything to go to them. You just gotta pay your room and board wherever they are held. We are trying to get one to come back to Connecticut in 2026. We'll see if we succeed. We might partner it with New York that also wants to get one into the area. And then NRCS has some technical support. FEMA, in theory, should be funding these through the hazard mitigation grants. I don't know how much of a priority that's going to be going forward, but they're there. NOAA has been is focused on removals of barriers, so not so much on culverts, but when it's tag teamed with another barrier removal project, they could very well apply. And then I had mentioned DOT, the Federal Highway Administration, has these other programs that I think maybe Luke's had identified in their records, but. And then we have state level too. So state has two programs right now: the Climate Resilience Fund and the local bridge. So DEEP's Climate Resilience Fund and DOT's local bridge program. So that is all I had. So I think I'm under time. So I got plenty of time for questions if you wanted to discuss anything, or otherwise move on. I'll move on.
Scroffa, work with Save This Town, work with Paul on the river restoration projects. I'm a project manager, mostly working on dam removals, but also some green infrastructure and some culvert. It's having that. What I'm gonna talk about today are 2 culvert projects that we've been working on as part of this partnership. That we've been working on as a part of this project with NVCOG and also Luke's. These are 2 real world culvert examples that were identified as flood hazards and also impediments to wildlife passage. So this is an unnamed stream on Mountain Road on the Seymour Oxford line. It's an existing culvert that's about 30 inches, reinforced concrete pipe, 45 feet long, curved under the road there. This overtops in the 1-year storm. It's very easily clogged. I think this metric is if it's not clogged. So this thing is overtopping pretty frequently and getting a lot of damage to the road from that overtopping. Paul talked about some of these impacts to aquatic organism passage. From the other side, you would be able to see that this is perch. Has a perched outlet. There's no substrate through that culvert. It's too shallow, it's too fast, and it's got a low openness ratio. So you can imagine if you're a creature moving through the stream channel, even if you see this and could fit through it, you would be disinclined to go through it because it's dark. You don't know what's on the other side. It's just an impediment to passage. And then Luke's has modeled design flows. So there's a range of flows from 30 CFS at the low end in a 1 year storm all the way up to 670 CFS in a 5 year storm. Next. This is the other one, Ransom Hall Road in Wolcott, Lindsley Brook, pretty big or a larger watershed area, bigger culvert, but still undersized. You can see obviously that it's experiencing damage. This is the downstream end, so that culvert is overtopping in the 10-year storm. That's like a fix that plywood and other wood that's up against there. Obviously some big boulders meant to armor the downstream end of that roadway. Again, this is perched, so fish or any kind of wildlife could not get through there. No substrate through that culvert. It's too shallow, it's too fast. And then the model design flows go from 87 CFS in a 2 year storm all the way up to nearly 900 CFS in a. While talking about wildlife, we were out at the Wolcott site and we noticed these eggs. We looked them up and we figured out that they were northern two-line salamander eggs. At that small stream, might not even, we drive over them every day. We don't really know what's down there. It's not really till you poke around, so you realize like there are a lot of life forms down there doing their thing. And removing that culvert, not removing, retrofit to that culvert would really increase, the habitat for this and many other species that we probably didn't even see occupying that stream channel below. So as Paul said, or Paul described the field data collection for the Stream Smart. For the Stream Smart process, it's a little different than a normal culvert survey to design a new culvert structure. So yes, there's the survey, the topographic survey of the culvert and the road. But then we, as he said, extend up and downstream much further, looking at different elements of the stream profile. We came up with a bit of a little tutorial for the survey crew to kind of point out the things we really wanted them to grab, and even sort of indicated some of those in the field with flags. So there's the stream profile as well as those cross sections at key locations. We flagged those out for folks, for the survey teams to capture. Looking at the active channel, but also the bankable channel, the floodplain. He described the pebble count, which we did out there. This is the gravelometer, high-tech tool that you use to measure the different pieces of substrate in the channel. And then also we created a stream sketch, so kind of a, not qualitative, but a little more illustrative way to kind of picture for ourselves and later in our later designs, kind of how that stream is configured, where are the pools, where are the ripples, where are the steps, what's the different distance between those, and how's it laid out. So we took going to talk about Mountain Road first. The way our results kind of came into design recommendations for Luke's to carry forward. What we're trying to do basically is to recreate the natural or existing stream channel in the culvert. So what we first want to do is describe and quantify that natural stream channel. So we take the average bankful width, the average bankful depth, and kind of make a model channel. And so that's kind of our recommended channel dimensions. We came up with those dimensions. And then based on those dimensions, we come up with the recommended culvert structure dimensions. So what sort of size and shape of a culvert structure will accommodate that ideal stream? In this project, we kind of had a better or a good, better, best approach. So what, for this specific site, what we were looking at was the ideal situation would be a 20-foot wide culvert that was about 4 feet in height. And the reason that was so wide and sort of short was you can see the road configuration there. There's not much freeboard above that culvert structure, and going down you hit ledge and you hit utilities. So that's why we were trying to fit that fit most of that stream and its adjacent floodplain banks into a wide flat structure. As for the sort of prescribed culvert substrate, so based on our pebble counts, we came up with the percentages of different like grain size that we would want to have for the fill in that culvert. We also characterize those like boulder steps that create that grade control as the water kind of steps down through the natural channel based on our stream sketch. And then we translated that to a series of boulder steps. And the components of those boulder steps, basically the size of the boulders that would create those steps and the distance between them through the culvert. And so Luke's went to work on a number of possible options. Understanding that there's more to this decision than just what's best for streams and salamanders and fish. There's a lot of other constraints, so they came up with a range of possible box culvert sizes. And they, put together a number of designs. We highlighted here just the one that we recommended, the largest possible one. So it's showing, that big expansion over that, narrow little RCP. This shows the existing conditions with the proposed conditions, and then just looking at it. I just kind of roughed it out on a photograph showing what that would look like. In the future, if that was the alternative that was chosen and funded and built. So the Ransom Hall site, this is kind of getting into that, ideal versus possible. So our recommendation was quite large, based on our calculations. We were suggesting a 24-foot wide culvert, about 7 feet high, actually either like a box culvert or actually one of those arches that we saw in some of those other photographs. That may not be feasible. Luke's was leaning towards a smaller structure, 16 feet by 8, and a box, or potentially this 3-sided box, which Paul touched on previously. A much better option, or a much better ecological addition to that structure would be having an open bottom for a natural substrate. And this is showing that the current recommended alternative, that improvement in size, span with substrate in the bottom, whereas here it has none. And then, again, just roughed in here to show what that would look like kind of on the ground relative to the current condition. So slope, don't have a lot to say about this at the moment. I think we're gonna talk more about how those structures are configured, or the proposed structures would be configured relative to the current slope. I'm not the geomorphologist, but Paul. So that's he can say more about these specific sites if he wants to, or we can just keep rolling and folks can ask about that after. This is more detail on those recommendations, or how we, the calculations that we went through to get the recommendations for the Ransom Hall Road site. We don't need to go into all those details, and folks understand the process. And similarly, the substrate recommendations and the boulder step recommendations. And that's it for me. I made it in 10 minutes. Right. If there's any questions?
Folks, I think, you want to go, Karen? Yeah, go ahead.
Last one before lunch, hang in there.
This is the last, so.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Karen Talameli with Luke's Consulting Engineers. And the part of the project goal here was to research available grants to help pay for these big infrastructure projects and unlock the community's potential. That's great, but our goal at Luke's was to provide a resource to identify funding opportunities. And
Christine, I anoint you. Interesting that this works with two owls at the same time.
Spoke, now you're on camera.
I know, it's makes everyone just bite their tongue, right?
It's definitely worth the wait, though.
Mhm.
Good morning. Good. I just saw you on the camera, I didn't know that back then. I try to hide, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I had a question, I might as well just put it out for everyone.
Sure.
Because of how communicating about the storm last year, you made a comment that a 1,000-year storm is not the same as a 1,000-year flood.
Yeah.
Like, it's.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Well, first of all, it's the way we calculate them, right? So a 1,000-year storm is looking at rainfall data at a given, like basically a pixel on a map. And so from years and years of rainfall records, we can calculate what the frequency of depth of rain would be at that location across any landscape. That's how our rainfall calculations are calculated. But that rainfall, like a storm that tracks across a watershed, that could be 1,000-year rainfall that happened across a watershed, like say the town of Oxford, for example, which is where the epicenter was. But a watershed that expands much larger than the town of Oxford, like the Naugatuck or Housatonic. If that rain didn't go to all parts of the watershed, then that didn't create a 1,000-year flood for the Housatonic or the Naugatuck. So if it's only a portion. Then the other thing is that when that rain occurs has a huge impact on how much it translates into stream flow. And so when we calculate flood events, the recurrence of flood events, we're not looking at precip data, we're looking at flow records that are measured in a river. And so those are two very different data sets. And when a rain event happens of any interval, if it happened, say, rain on snow in the middle of winter when there's no vegetation and the ground is frozen, same rain event happening in the middle of June when there's vegetation and the ground is soft and absorbing water produces a very different flood effect. So those two things, and then of course, changes in land use will affect that as well. So a forested watershed that gets a 1,000-year rain event, it's gonna have a very different flow response than an urbanized watershed that gets the same 1,000-year rain event. You know what I mean? So those factors are what makes those two calculations very different and like often very different results. No.
So, our goal as Luke's as part of the project was to provide a resource to efficiently identify grant funding opportunity and available resources to prepare a competitive grant application. And the spreadsheet that will accompany each design study will have interactive links so that it starts out on a federal level so that you could click into this program and see an overview, the eligibility, and the forms to apply. We have included goes to the top, as Paul was also mentioned, the funding limits for each grant and the match requirements. And I think it's always very encouraging to look at these match requirements, not so much dollar for dollar, but to see how creative you could be with in-kind resources. Public works, businesses, and what you could do, and that could make a robust grant and more affordable on a local level. So we've identified couple of this on federal level, the National Culvert Removal, Replacement and Restoration Grant, the Flood Mitigation Assistance SWIFT Grant Program, which I think is F3 and F4, could be considered for these programs. And on the deep side, LOSIP and steep grants may be applicable in the community for these programs. And on the Department of Transportation, a trip grant may be a resource for you to fund some of these. What we've also included is some resources that are available to communities. There's applying for grants could be rather intimidating, and there's so much help out there for communities to access. UConn has a great program. They'll actually help you pre-apply. They'll take site visits, go through the application, and before it's even submitted, they'll go line by line for you. I actually have some information on that as a handout. The Community Investment Fund is especially applicable to distressed communities. And I think that's another a little further. Yeah, down to the resources. Yeah, just a couple more. Thank you. And DEEP has a great concierge service that's available for you to see what is available and fall through the process. And they highly encourage you to reach out to them. There's so many programs available, whether it's for these culverts or other opportunities you may have in town, but there's a lot of help. I keep hearing that there's a lot of money available and people to assist in getting that. So it's been a great process to work with NVCOG, and we're very happy to help any community explore the resources available. I will make these fact sheets from the University of Connecticut Clear Technical Assistance Program available, but super resource for anybody. Thank you very much.
Just one quick note about some of the resources you may see on the table. We have, and for folks who are sitting in the back, we can get you stuff. We have a one-page explainer, and then we have a little sheet that has a QR code on it. Molly Johnson here put together a fantastic zip file that has so many resources. It will have the presentations from today, but it has links and explainers and so much stuff. And so the QR code will bring you right to our website where you can download any of that. So please make sure you grab one before you leave.
So if you download today, it doesn't have the PowerPoints, but if you download tomorrow, it'll have that.
Is it lunchtime, Craig?
Yes, that's the information on the resource page. And they didn't speak, but they made a big contribution to our resource page, and that's Tom Doherty and Molly Johnson and Kevin Ellis, who put together the resource page, and their ongoing duties here are to keep abreast of all these MS4 and stormwater management things. So we thank them. They didn't speak, but we thank them for their time. And I just wanted to also just acknowledge Luke's and Save the Sound and their individual team members for the job that they did. They're doing all of this in addition to designing and doing the work on 9 different projects across the region, including maybe one in your town. And some of those that those of you who are here that are not in their town hopefully you'll have a chance to work with either one of these groups in the future, but I just wanted to make them aware and let's thank them for their participation too. So now, if you'd like, we can get lunch, and if there's any questions, we can do a formal Q&A, or we can individually, if there's someone that you'd like to approach and ask a question of individually, that's fine, too. Whatever works.
Thanks, Greg.
What's going on there? They let you escape? Yeah, they did. Coming first, you know? Yeah, you, how are you? Good, good, how are you?
Going to Europe for public work.
Yeah, I want to play across. I don't know how I was right to his left, but I'm glad it is. That's right to the base. Oh, so project always do. Yeah, I'm 60%. I have feels good. You know, yeah. I was, yeah. That's not delayed for the utility. Then, that would be.
There was, but I don't know, Molly's the one who handed them out. Molly,
But she has some other.
it was, they were, yeah, certainly, please feel free to leave them there.
Hey, Jerry, what's going on? Good job. Going right up.
Very nice, yeah.
You're not recording. Right, Sharon, let him go right now. Yes.
You're supposed to be in charge of that. I'm not gonna.
Thinking about it.
Yeah.
No.